Hi, this is Rob Anspach, and I'm actually coming to you 14 hours from the future. Well, not really. I'm actually interviewing Pauline Longdon from Australia, and she's 14 hours ahead of me. So it's 8 o'clock in the morning here in Pennsylvania. It's 10 p.m. there, and you're in Brisbane, right?
I sure am. Yep.
And so what we're going to talk about is Pauline is Australia's queen of copywriting, but it wasn't always that way. So we're going to talk about her transition from and into being this brilliant copywriter. So I want to welcome you, Pauline. And if you want to add anything that I might have missed, please do.
Oh, I think you're very generous with the introduction. Thank you very much. I think there's many queens of copywriting, but I'm happy to take the title for the time being.
Now it wasn't always that way. So you've been studying copywriting for a couple of years now. What did you do prior?
Well, I've got a long history of many different things. I used to be a registered nurse. That's my first job that I ever went into. And then I had a calling to join the military, and I was in the military for about 14 years. Had to get out of that because they burnt me out, and I ended up with major depression. And after leaving the military and having that stringent system of hierarchy and bosses and, having to do what you're told all the time, I was someone else, and I certainly couldn't go back to nursing. I was too burned out. So I started to look around for other jobs. So I basically bought myself a job by becoming a business owner. And then I reached a ceiling, and I thought, this is just crazy. It's just a blind leading the blind. I was doing the same ads as everyone else, getting the same crappy results as everyone else. And so I started a search to find the answers, and anyway, I sort of led down the path of direct response marketing. And I think anyone who finds direct response marketing also finds copywriting as well, because they go hand in hand together. I think it's a perfect marriage.
Now, your skill set as a nurse, you had to have empathy, for your patients. And I find that same empathy plays very well when writing copy, because you're bringing trust into the equation.
Yeah, I think a lot of people misjudge what empathy is, and I've had many writers sit there and try to tell me how empathetic they are, and it's like one of those sayings that if you have to tell someone, then you're not. Empathy is something that you have, and it oozes from you through every pore and every channel that you can use. But if you have to sit there and tell people how empathetic you are, then I don't feel that they are very empathetic at all. So empathy is a really funny thing, because I don't know, people have it or they don't. I think what people get mixed up with empathy is actually sympathy and maybe even compassion. Yeah, empathy is so different. It's all heartfelt.
I've noticed that the more heartfelt you are to your customer base, the easier it is for you to communicate what you want them to understand. Now, there's a lot of business owners out there that don't have that heartfelt concern to their clients, and they're gruff, they're rough, they could care less if the client paid them or not, if the client came to them. And those types of people, I don't believe, should even be an entrepreneur. They should go work for someone else, not have to deal with customers, and here we are, being that empathetic, sympathetic, heartfelt person who wants to understand their concerns so we can sell them more.
Yeah, and it's not selling them things that they don't need either. There's like an ethical, side of selling, and that is, you're helping them solve a solution. And yes, it's at a profit to us, but they must get something in return, and it must be something of value to them and their life. Otherwise, we're just snake oil sellers, and like those guys that you're just talking about, and girls as well that are really quite heartless, and they'll just make a sale at any and all cost, and they burn and churn through their client list, and they just think that there's plenty more where that came from. But I feel that there's been a shift in consciousness that people expect more from the people that they're buying from these days.
Now, you had mentioned that you were in the military, and how did that affect you? How did that change you, or even add to being an entrepreneur?
I think being in the military gives you a self-discipline, because when I was in the military, I was an officer, and I had to be a self-starter. I had to be able to not only take orders from someone, but also pass on those orders as if they were mine. The sign of a good officer is to get like a bad command from your commanding officer and still get your, well, in Australia we call soldiers diggers. Now that's our affectionate name for them. So to get your diggers to do what they've been told without questioning, although you may not agree with those orders yourself. So you're sort of like the middle person where, you're getting these orders come through, but then you've got to sell them to your soldiers in a way that's going to make them palatable to them, put them in a way that they're going to understand and not feel ripped off or, mucked around, because a lot of the orders were, just, I don't know, some of them were not very sensible or didn't, I don't know, help the cause very much, but some of them were very ego-based. So yeah, just to pass those messages on, the orders on, and get them done. I think that's what it's given me in the way of copywriting, that I can explain, concepts to people in a way that they understand, and then they can actually be motivated or compelled to take action on.
Now, copywriting is different things to different people. Whether it's short to copy, whether it's long form, multiple pages, where do you find that balance?
I actually like all copy. I think with the short copy, there is an absolute art to that, and I don't think a lot of people have mastered the art. They're still using too many words, or the wrong words, because you have to be concise. I mean, Joe Sugarman, he was a master at the small space ad sort of style thing, and he said every word there has to earn its right to be there. And I mean, many people before him, Eugene Schwartz and that, all said that every word has to earn its right to be there. But then in the long form sales copy, you can't just keep, talking and writing just for the sake of it, just so that you can, have the dubious title of, oh, wow, I wrote a 99-page sales letter, because no one wants to read that. So there has to be a balance. But I mean, as a copywriter, I don't restrict myself. I think it's got more to do with the message than it does with the way that you present it. If it needs to be a long message, then do that and do it justice, or if it needs to be short, then know that it needs to be short and present it that way.
Now, also, you also present your skill set to people in Australia. I mean, you have these little conferences, seminars that you put on
workshops.
To help workshops. And how does that work? I mean, I know here in America, when I do a workshop, some people are like skeptical. They have no idea what they're going to learn, and some, though they may have an idea, still don't realize the potential that they're going to get from the seminar.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of the objections to going to something that's going to improve your writing is based in the fact that a lot of people think that they did high school level English, so they're fine. And what I say to those people is that, do you have an accountant to do your books for your business? And they'll say, of course. I say, well, why? I say, because it's too complicated for me to work out. And I say, well, if you don't trust yourself with your books, with your profit and loss statement, well, why would you trust yourself with the words that are going to get you that money? Your English, your high school level English is not the level of English that you need to be able to convey your message, compel people to buy and take action. And and you see that all the time, Rob, don't you? You see horrible copy on web pages that just doesn't say a thing, or you see a lot of web pages with no copy on them, not even a headline, and it's sort of like a vanity website, because all they're worried about is the way they look, or what they want people to do, not what they want to do for the consumer or the reader. So it's interesting.
What made me a better SEO person was because I had 15 years of experience learning direct response marketing, learning the keywords that I needed to understand people's industry, how consumers act, their buying habits. And we don't want, at least I don't like, these long form headlines that bore you to death. I like the quick, get my attention words or phrases, and people are still hung up on these oh, let's make this headline really fancy or unique, and then no one understands what it is that they're trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole purpose of the headline, isn't it? It's just to grab their attention, give them a taste of what's to come. But the whole idea of the headline is to get the next line of copy read, and then that line of copy's job is to get the next line read. I think what people need to know is that what role each line of the copy has, like for emails, the subject line isn't trying to sell a thing. It's just getting the email opened. That is the only job of that, component of the email. And then, the next line is to get you to go to a link. Everything in copy has its place and it has its role. And I think sometimes people just see an email or they'll see a sales letter and they think, I could have written that. I mean, I get that all the time. I get clients say, I could have written that. And I think, you know what, if you could have, you would have. And that's not insulting to them. It's just the way that it is. Or perhaps if they could have written it, it might have taken a year, and that would have been a year's lag time before they actually went to market. But sometimes I think people think that what we do as copywriters is incredibly basic, but they just don't see all the copy clicks and the little embedded sort of like tricks. Trick sounds manipulative, but they are. They're little crafty little bits that we insert to make sure that the reader stays on the page.
Now, from my standpoint, I've learned a lot over the last 15 years, probably a little longer, and we mentioned Joe, or you mentioned Joe Sugarman. He's one of my favorites. Dan Kennedy, Gary Halbert. He's been passed now for a couple of years, but who are some of your favorites when you try to get it inspired to sit down and say, well, this is how I want this copy to look like?
I really like Gary Halbert. Gary Halbert is a big favorite of mine. Unfortunately, I never got to meet him or really got much of his stuff. It was hard to get because, as he said, he passed. So I've really immersed myself in John Carlton's material. I like his material. It's I like it when you read a sales letter and you just want to buy something at the end, even if you're not the, like the gender that he's selling to, like a, male sex tips or something like that. It's like the book was really fascinating just from the sales letter. I love Caroline Anglade Cole. She's a health writer. She's one of the best female copywriters I've ever, read, and I'll get to meet her later in the year over in Florida. Gary Bencivenga is an absolute favorite, and he's one of the reasons I went to America last year for the Titans of Direct Response, basically because he was coming out of retirement. So yeah, and there are many influences. Dan Kennedy, Laurie Morgan Ferrero. She was the first female copywriter that I found that could actually help me to find that happy medium between the really punchy, very challenging masculine copy and where most people try to go in rebellion to that is to a really soft sort of copy, almost apologetic, but then they're not asking for the sale. So I wanted to find the happy place in between that, and Laurie helped me to find that.
Let's talk about your trip to America. I know that you went to Los Angeles. You went to
Yeah.
New York. You went to, I guess the event was in what, Boston?
Oh, Connecticut. Yeah.
Connecticut. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, kind of tell us a little bit about that journey.
Well, yeah, I just got an email one day. One of my friends in Australia said, "Oh, Pauline, have a look at this sales letter." And it was for the Titans of Direct Response. And Dan Kennedy was going to be there, Joe Sugarman, Rob Anspach was coming out of retirement for this very thing. What it was a tribute to Marty Edelson, who had been well, he owned Boardroom and he basically built it from the ground up. And he passed away the year before. Now, I didn't know that side of any of it, but I just saw the list of titans that were going to be on the stage, and I said to Ray, my partner, I said, we've got to be there. Just there's no excuses ever. So we basically, just did everything that we could to get the money to come over, and found ourselves staying at Laurie's house, which is pretty awesome, in LA. She drove us around and spent a few days there. Then we headed over to New York and Connecticut, attended the conference there, met one of my mentors, Harlan Kilstein, and Doberman Dan was there. I mean, it was just like everyone who was anyone was there. It was quite incredible. And then on the way back, we stayed at Laurie's house again and got to hang out with Bond and Kevin Halbert, Gary Halbert's sons. And it was just the trip of a lifetime, really. Just all the people that I met and got to just have conversations with people like Gary Halbert and Joe Sugarman, and it was incredible. Like, I don't know what else to say. I just feel like a schoolgirl at a One Direction concert. It's like incredible.
Yeah, I met, I interviewed Joe Sugarman years ago, and I got to finally meet him in 2013 when I was in Vegas, and I actually met Laurie there in person. And, it was just a great experience. So, it is. It's like meeting that celebrity that I can't compare them to One Direction. It's just not a band I listen to, but
Well, I don't listen to them either.
Yeah, like the Beatles or whatever. My favorite band was Queen, but
wow.
the member is Freddie's been dead since 20 years, but if I met him now, I'd freak out. But anyway.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You touched on early about depression, and that's I think every entrepreneur goes through some stage of depression. How do you cope? I know that you probably have an escape, a cave that you go into, that you could just get in there and figure out what you want to do with writing, but it's got to affect you mentally.
Oh, it does. And as I said, I was discharged with major depression, and the military wasn't very good at looking after the people after they've been discharged. So they basically said to me, and I call it a life sentence. They said to me, "You'll be depressed for the rest of your life, and you probably won't do much good." So I'm thinking, well, why even be here? But then something inside me just wanted me to stick around, and so I started to look outside the medical box and found some alternative therapies. And actually, I won't call them alternative, because what they do, they work with conventional medicine. Let's call them complementary therapies. And they started to get me out of depression, and that was just through meditation and just a different sort of mindset. Just getting rid of the negative self-talk and things like that. Sounds a bit woo-woo, but you know what? I'm here today because of it. So it does work, if you allow it to. So, but yeah, in as far as depression, sometimes I say to people, it's almost like the black dog comes and just marks its territory every now and then, just piddles on your leg or whatever. But I had a post during the week on Facebook because I just wanted to be very transparent and real, because on Facebook a lot of people are all about the sickly sweet sugar-coated side of life, and I really crashed bad this week. I ended up having to retreat to my cocoon for a couple of hours, which was good because it was only a few hours, whereas in the past it might have been a couple of days, maybe even a week, even a month. So I think what it is you just need to really find your purpose, why you're here, and realize that, you know, because what had happened to me was a woman had set me off with some very accusatory stuff going through a system that my partner's going through, pointing the finger. But then, I don't know, something has made me look at her through a different mindset. And I went, you know what she's saying about us isn't even about us. It's all about her. It's all about her dissatisfaction with life. So instead of me taking it on as being my stuff, I actually then just didn't deflect it or anything, but I refused to accept it. And so I just let myself have that little pity party, and then that was it. I woke up and then I wrote some copy. But you're 100% right. It can actually muck around with your mindset. So I knew that I had a deadline, but I knew that I couldn't write in that state. So let's just go and just have that moment, ensure that it's only a moment, wake up, get up, and then go and get back into it. And I do have I call it my bunker of brilliance, and it's just my little office. And it's just the smallest room. It's not much bigger than a broom closet, actually. But it's got my computer and all the stuff that I need to write copy. And the funny thing is that I've got a mindset that wherever I am, that is my bunker of brilliance. And I call it that because bunker of brilliance has nothing to do with work. It doesn't feel like work. It doesn't have that feeling of being a chore as well. So, I mean, that's sort of still extending into the mindset of how I write. And keeping myself in that positive mindset. And I use music as well to elevate my mood. You know, I know that, who was it, Ted Nicholas? He likes to listen to Mozart, and I tried to listen to Mozart, but it's good music. But I'm a bit of a fan of like electronic vocal trance, because it's got really nice elevating lyrics, and it just gets me out of any sort of funk that I'm in. So.
You know, and I find that, you know, these days when you experience that depression, you know, you can use that to fuel the fire of your you know, your copy. You make it more intense.
Yep.
You know,
absolutely. Because I mean, any emotional experience that we go through, I mean, I think as copywriters or writers in general, you know, because just because we write copy, we're still writers. We're just collectors of life experiences and getting into the emotion of it. And, you know, just it's like our minds are a scrapbook, or you know, other people would say it's a swipe file of emotions and experiences that we can draw on. And I mean, I always put in, whenever I write a sales letter, I always put in an emotional story that connects with the reader and lets them know that they're not alone. And I think that is so important, to help people know that, you know, they've found the answer, they're not alone, and get into the emotion that they're feeling. So emotion is very important.
Well, and those stories that we incorporate into our sales letters, our copy, or even our ghostwriting for others, you know, those stories build trust. They make us human. You know, people can see that in you know, they can relate to it, and I think it really helps, because now that they're not just being compelled to do something, they're actually living in that moment of that copy.
Yep.
And I think that really helps. Now, you know, I know from my standpoint, you know, working with clients all over the world, the English language, you know, the Queen's English, what you guys use in Australia and England, is a little different than the American English.
You
know,
it
and
is.
so how do you, as a copywriter, in the back of your mind when you're writing, have to adjust to those words that we seem to just, you know, I don't know if we don't care, if we just tried to simplify things or make them worse, but they're not the Queen's English.
Look, I must be honest, it's been a very interesting transition, because when I was in the army, I was training medics, you know, soldiers into medics, and we spell via the English way of spelling, like words, and especially medical terminology. So, a tumor is Tumour. In the US, it's OR. You drop the U. And then other words like estrogen would be OES, instead of ES. I used to be like a spelling Nazi. I would fail soldiers if they misspelled words. But these days, I mean, I've had to, just change my whole attitude and be more relaxed. Even the way that I'm speaking to you now, I just said a word to you, you didn't pick it up because I've adapted the way I speak to Americans. So which reflects the way that I write when I'm writing to an American or US-based clientele or market. And that word that I just said was spelled. In Australia, we say spelt.
Mm-hmm.
We also say, there's many different words. So when I'm ghostwriting for another copywriter, or if I'm writing for an American market, I always make sure that I use the American spelling. I got found out one day because I was ghostwriting for a copywriter, and I said, you've probably seen this a ton of times, or you've seen this a ton. I use the English ton, not the American ton. The spelling's a little different. And the copywriter said, I can't hand this in, and they'll know someone different has written it. But I think it's just not judging, because I know that, I'll give you a quick story. There was a girl on Facebook the other night who's Australian. She has a Facebook page that's got like over 1 million people on it. It's all about healing and all that sort of stuff. It's a global page. And every time she writes something in her Australian dialect and the Australian spelling, the Americans on the page get up and say, you don't spell it like that, or can't you spell, or, blah, blah, blah. So she was up in arms about it, saying, well, I want to write a book, but, which version of English do I use, the American English or English? And I said, it depends on where the most, like the biggest number of your market is. Why would you want all of the Americans that are going to be the ones that are primarily going to buy your book? Use their version. So I think it's just having that flexibility, and it's almost like having, giving people the courtesy of speaking the way they speak instead of the way we speak, if that makes sense.
Well, the other day, and this goes back to your word spelt. I was on a client's website, and I'm reading her copy, and it was, every time she mentioned spelt, I was cringing. I'm like, this is not how you spell it. So I went through and changed it.
Yeah.
And she came back and she's like, I spell it spelt, S-P-E-L-T. I said, yes, but we're in America. I said, and you live in America. And she's like, I don't care. I'm not originally from America, so this is how I spell it.
Yeah.
And every person who went to that website was telling her to spell words right. And
that's your market telling you right there.
Yeah, and I said to her, well, I apologize. I said, when I see American companies, targeting to Americans, then you should really be America, Americanized with your words. But we live in a global society,
We do.
and it's hard when you're looking at words. Especially with my last book, my co-author was from Canada. Canada uses, your English. And so when we were going back and forth on the book, I'm going through and editing it, and he's like, you can't change that word. That's how I spell it. And I said, well, who's going to be our primary market? And he says, well, America. And I said, well, then there you go. So sometimes it's a give and take.
Yeah. But I mean, I think people have to get over their hang-ups about that, Rob, because look at like when you buy a computer, like I buy a computer in Australia, the default settings is for American English. And yes, we can change it. And even like the debate whether it's an S or a Z in prioritize and authorize and all that sort of stuff. I've just got the philosophy, when in Rome, spell like the people. But especially if you want to get money off people as well, don't upset them with like just silly things. I had a client in Australia recently who does the most exquisite jewelry. Like, it's just revolutionary what she does with pearls and diamonds. But anyway, so I was writing her copy, and then I said, do you actually want to sell this to overseas people? And she goes, yes, I would. So what I did, and I didn't have to do this, and I didn't charge her any more for this, but what I did was I did one free report in Australian spelling, and then I did a free report with American spelling, so she can then have the Americans, like if they can say and track where they come from, then they can download the American spelling ones, because even just the word jewelry is spelt differently. So if you want to sell high-end, high-price ticketed jewelry to these clients, don't upset them with just one simple little word. Like, just, I don't know, just don't upset people unnecessarily, I think. But I think as a copywriter, having this as an attitude, though, helps you and like what you were saying, is you're going to help your clients out to make them look more professional in front of people, rather than making an idiot of themselves. People thinking that they can't spell, or that they've spelled words incorrectly. It's such an avoidable thing. I don't know why people don't try harder.
Well, how do you get into the mindset of your clients? I mean, do you get them on the phone? Do you get them on Google Hangout? Do you get them on Skype? I mean, you ultimately have to tell their story. You have to tell their voice, use their voice, in copy. So how do you learn a little bit about them?
There's lots of ways we can do it these days. And as you said, there's interviews, so you can get them on a Hangout or on Skype or whatever. One thing that I like to do is use Amazon reviews. I like to read the news, but also, instead of just reading articles, I love to read the posts underneath and the comments underneath news articles. That gives us such a huge insight into, like someone said to me recently, you've got like an insight into humanity. And she said, I've never met anyone like it, because I'm always looking at what people think about certain issues in the media and things like that. And I think having that, I don't know, awareness of people and their plight and what they're going through in their everyday life helps me to write from their perspective and know what is actually important to them. And it's funny, when I do write copy for certain markets, I have people say, Pauline, did you write that with me in mind, or were you writing that to me? And also, that's the other thing, Rob, is like, you've got that research of the end reader or your client or whoever, but also when you're writing copy, you're just writing to one person. You're not writing to a whole market. You're just having a conversation like we are now. Although other people will listen to this, I'm not there going, hey, y'all, do this and blah, blah, blah. It's like, it's just us. And that's the way good copy is written. Instead of trying to impress the masses and be everything to everyone, it's just, simply having a one-on-one conversation. And that helps to build trust as well.
One of the things that I like to do, and people think I'm a little nutsy for it, but, I don't like to read the 5-star reviews, because I know that the 5-star reviews have already, they're already sold on it. I go to the 1-star reviews or the 2-star reviews, and I see all the different complaints, and then I want to I want to take those complaints and turn it into a positive, put it into their copy or put it into their content, because when I'm coming to you for a solution, I already have, I've already read these reviews, and I want to know how you're going to handle, the poor product or the poor service, or, how are you going to make it worth my while to use you?
Yeah, and also if you're writing for a product that's similar to the one that you've just reading about on Amazon, is you can actually then answer all of those objections, as long as your client does it. Like, there's no lying, but you can actually answer objections based on what you've already read that people had complaints about, and that's what I love to do. That's why I say, like social media and the way people are so open on all this on the internet, we've got like it's almost like voyeuristic view into people's lives, and they show like way too much of themselves in their attitudes and the what they say on social media. It's phenomenal. But as a copywriter and researcher, because copywriting is mostly about researching, I'd say, it's about 80% research, and then the rest of it, the 20% is just sitting down and just channeling what you've got in your mind into the keyboard and just presenting it in a way that is palatable to the person that's reading it. But yeah, what a great research tool. I mean, it's incredible.
Where do you
Absolutely.
find your inspiration? I mean, for your research, is it Facebook, or is it LinkedIn or Twitter? Is it a combination of all of them?
Well, I'm not so good on Twitter and LinkedIn. Facebook seems to be my social media of choice. I have a pretty good following on there and really good engagement, and I really enjoy the people that I'm connected to there. But I'll find myself on weird forums. Google's incredible. You just type in some keywords, or like I'll even search in sentences, how do I blah, 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 or where would I find, and just ask them questions. And then I will just find a trail, and I think sometimes it's intuitive, or I've just got a knack for it, but I'll find myself down a rabbit hole finding the innermost darkest secrets of the market, and then I just write to that. And then people say, did you have me in mind? It was funny the other day on Facebook, someone said had on their wall, with all this is it the NSA or whoever it is, the agency that's going to be looking at Google searches. It's like, I wonder what they're going to think of copywriter searches. I mean, because the things I have to research for my markets and the depth that I go to for the research, I shudder to think what sort of profile I give me. It'd be all messed up.
Well, what I've discovered is being a marketer, being a copywriter, being, an SEO guy, is I have to learn everything there is to know about that field, that industry.
Absolutely.
So one day I could be a doctor, one day I could be a carpet cleaner, one day I could be an electrician, and it's great for my ADD, because, that way I can be everything to anybody. But, I'm thinking, what's the long-term effect of that's going to happen, on my own psyche, what therapy am I going to need down the road? But it really sometimes adds to the brilliance of how you write, because you're not the same person. You're not constantly doing the same thing.
Yeah, I agree, because I've written for over like 42, I think it's maybe up to about 47 different industries so far. I've only been writing for professionally for just under 3 years now. So I've done a lot in that time, because I didn't say no to jobs based on the fact that, I haven't written for this market before.
Well, we lost her. Hopefully she'll come back on. You know, that's the joy of technology. Sometimes, you know, being that it's in the future, stuff happens. But we're going to edit this out, so it doesn't really matter.